Ilya, it's been quite a week.
And quite a month, you know.
Quite a month, yeah, fair enough, quite a month. So, there's a lot of things we could talk about today, right? I mean, we could talk about Ukrainian Independence Day. We could talk about Prigozhin dying. We could talk about F-16s, drone attacks in Moscow, other parts. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the things we could talk about. BRICS, the ruble, the Kerch Bridge. But I actually want to talk about something else. I want to talk about something that happened not in Russia, not in Ukraine, but in the United States. I want to talk about you already know.
Republican primaries, yes.
Yeah, well, debate. There were 8 people on the stage. There was one person not on the stage. And Ukraine led to one of the hottest discussions, I mean, almost a shouting match at one point between Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley. I want to dissect what we saw and heard there with you, and then I want to talk about really what does it mean for Ukraine and Russia. I really want to dig into, beyond just the bullet points or the sound bites. What's it really mean? So, first of all, I'm assuming you either watched the debate in real time or watched it taped. What were your thoughts on that part in particular?
I'm thinking that the current administration, while doing a lot of great things for Ukraine, is actually failing a lot at home, explaining what do they want. Mm-hmm. And what's the end game, and why Americans do need to spend all this money. And I heard remarks that we saw from some of the Republicans about the Hawaii wildfire and expenditure on Ukraine. So that's what
and the border. Protecting the border was another.
And protecting the border, yes, and a lot of different other things. And I think they have a fair point, because I think that you should never do your spending without understanding what do you want to get. Otherwise, it's a black hole, and that's what it is actually. If I would say if the current administration would have spent the same amount of money, but right away when the whole thing was just starting, there would be no Russian military on the territory of Ukraine already. And when it's all the time delaying the inevitable, first delaying just irregular missiles, then it was delaying the tanks, then it was delaying longer, not so far not the longest, but long-range missiles. Was delaying the F-16s, and then all the time you're questioning, why the offensive is so slow, guys. Because you are delaying the deliveries. That's why it's so slow. People shouldn't die with the bare hands, and obviously Ukrainian high command is consciously delaying things because they want to get more arms at their disposal, and it's kind of hard to run an offensive in steppe where everything is flat, and when you don't have the air power on top of you. Ukrainians managed to sink numerous Putin's ships with just drones. Without having long-range missiles, different drones are flying onto Moscow. So it's like Ukraine has the missiles already.
Yes.
So what kind of escalation, guys, we are talking about? It's already happening, and Putin believes that United States government is doing everything human possible to remove him from his office. But while United States government is doing nothing in this regard, and even prohibiting to Ukraine to do the same thing, and all those bills, they are mounting up, and they would continue to do so because the strategy, we are not letting Ukraine lose, is something totally different from the idea that we making Ukraine win. Win, it's the end.
Yes.
Not losing can last forever.
Yes.
And that's what's going on. And finally, I'm sorry for being so alone in my reply, but it's something which like makes me anxious. Is people do not understand one simple thing, that even like supposedly Ukraine liberates all of its territory, doesn't mean that the war ends. It means that the front line matches Ukrainian border, but it's still
Yes.
the front line, and the countries are still at war. The only end game which is theoretically possible for this war is the regime change in Moscow. And I'm not saying that Americans or Europeans or somebody else needs, to do it instead of Russians doing this. We have our manpower, we have our own arms, we have our own inspiration, we have our own vision on how Russia can look like and should look like after the change, and we will do the change, and we have
Yes.
good support from Ukraine. But the fact that the world is not helping at all, and rather vice versa, all the time, giving false hopes to Putin's elite that you just need to wait a little bit and we will start negotiations. You just wait a little bit, the offensive goes nowhere, and we'll try to freeze the conflict. That's wrong encouragement. That makes them move in the wrong direction, in the opposite direction from making peace. And that's something that we guys need to change together.
What you're saying, I know, it's controversial, right? There's a lot of
Why?
people, well,
That's very straightforward. Come on, what is controversial here?
there's a lot of people that are going to push back like Ramaswamy and say we shouldn't be there at all. So that's a controversy. There's a lot of people that are going to say, we haven't given everything. We can't give everything because of escalation. And you've made your argument about why that's a not a legitimate argument, because the escalation is happening anyway. But it's still, there's a lot of controversy to what you're saying.
No,
So
it's see, firstly, the escalation has already happened. Secondly, another usual argument in the United States that U.S. priority should be on China, and the rest is to Europeans to do. The best encouragement for China to take over Taiwan would be Putin taking over all of Ukraine or part of Ukraine or whatever. And the best thing to stop China from doing anything stupid is defeating Putin. And thirdly, when United States is abstaining from major wars in Europe, that always ends with Pearl Harbor. And that's what happened in the past, and that would happen now as well. So just listen to the Russian TV, what they're saying about Alaska, and listen to the some propaganda guys in China as well. Look at North Korea, what is doing. Everything is watching this, and the best way to prevent the war to be spread is to contain it and to fix the problem. And nobody is asking American foot on the ground. So America is not to spill any blood. And in terms of finance, as I said, with the money that was already spent, we could have already fixed the problem long time ago.
So break it down for me really simply. Given the logic of everything you just said, why hasn't the U.S. done that, either from the beginning or a year ago or 6 months ago or starting today? Why isn't that the policy of the U.S.?
Because the U.S. is run by bureaucratic logic right now. There is no vision. That's the problem. There is no Roosevelt. There is no Churchill. There is no Reagan. Like different people can choose their different preferred figure, but all of those guys, they shared one thing: they had vision. They had vision. They have guts. They knew how to pursue their goals. And right now, people are afraid of thinking about the goals, not even for pursuing them. They are not thinking about the goals. They are too afraid to do even that. And when you are not thinking, when you're just following with the flow of events, that never ends well.
So one of the fears must be if Putin is gone, we might get a worse Putin.
Yeah. So then, what's the conclusion out of this? It's absolutely a correct fear to my mind. Okay, so Prigozhin is gone, but there would be another one.
Yes.
But so what? What's the conclusion to my mind? Yes, if you're afraid something that something is about to happen, just let's do something about it. Let's make another variant. Or prepare to face the very bad variant that it's about to happen, if that's acceptable. Right now, the US is saying, okay, so somebody could be worse. Let's keep Putin there.
Yes.
But okay, then why would you waste money on Ukraine then? If you're okay with Putin staying in power and doing what he is doing, but if you would not spend money on Ukraine, then you would be spending money on Poland and Lithuania pretty soon, and way larger money, and with American troops on the ground. Yes, because then it would be already NATO obligations. Right now, Ukraine does this work at a very fraction of cost.
Yes. Yeah. So in a way, you're saying if you're not going to replace Putin, there's no sense doing anything.
Absolutely. That's you need to have an objective. Okay, put another objective. I just can't think about anything else. Because to me, winning the war and removing Putin are equal things. You know, one cannot happen without another. If Putin is gone, the war ends. If we want to win the war, we need to remove Putin. That's absolutely same things. But if you are not going to do it, then what do you want to do, guys? Then
I wanna drill into this a little bit with you. So we're essentially talking about regime change, right?
Yeah.
And often, I think for people, at least in the United States, I can't speak for Europe, but here in the US, I think when we hear that term, we think US-led regime change. And I want to be really clear, that's not what you're suggesting at all.
God forbid. God forbid.
Well, I think that's a unanimous take, is God forbid. But you're not proposing that at all. I mean, well, let's talk about the Congress of People's Deputies for a minute. Let's talk about the Legion Freedom of Russia. I mean, you're not saying the world should get behind regime change of Russia. You're saying Russians should get behind regime change of Russia.
No, the world should get behind us. Yes,
let me re-say that.
Yeah.
We should not perform the act of regime change.
Right.
We should support the actors who will make it happen, who are Russians themselves. In other words, Russia's regime change comes from Russia, not from some external nation or nation state.
No, that's absolutely right. First of all, again, if there is somebody who has the right to do something about Russia inside Russia, is the only country in the world which is Ukraine, because these two countries are at war. Yes. And it's absolutely logical that Ukraine trying to save itself, and as I said, Ukraine completely understands that Ukraine needs to win the war. It should do, and it's doing everything possible to achieve this. In Ukraine, there are two positions. One position is that Russia needs to collapse, which I don't share, and which people in the United States fear very much, the establishment, and I think rightfully so. And the second option is the new democratic government of Russia and de-imperialization of Russia, demilitarization of Russia, decentralization of Russia, and that's exactly the vision of ours. And we are not just dreamers, as many representatives of the Russian opposition. We have the armed forces, we have the armed resistance inside country, and we have Congress of People's Deputies, who is the shadow parliament which drafted the new legislation and can precisely tell what is about to happen in the legal terms and the terms of the new constitution that was designed the new country. So we have all the pieces.
Yes.
What we don't have is that the elites inside Russia, and no changes ever in Russia at least happened without the participation, at least a part of the elites. But they cannot understand whether it's serious enough. They're saying, okay, you have the legion, but maybe it's not that large. You know, it's already sizable, but it's not as large as the Russian army. So it may play a role, but it will play a role at the end when everything will be in the disarray. So we better sit and wait. And then they are saying, okay, and your shadow parliament is what you are saying, you know, would be the future parliament. But who else does?
Yeah.
And where is that? What whom they respect is they respect the West. And if the West says, okay, so yeah, it should be some future government of Russia, and so we understand that those guys at the helm are war criminals. We have to deal with them somehow, and you are dealing with them anyway because they physically are with arms control and with this big red button and whatever. But you know, we need some future alternative, you know, and let's do that. And then Russian elites understand, okay, so the world made its mind, and there is a military force which is growing and coming, and there is already constructed alternative, and this alternative knows what to do about the sanctions, which is plaguing the economy and them personally.
Yes.
And then all the pieces fit together and they start to move. And then we have our fifth column inside the country. We have outside forces, and okay, we do it. But right now, it's as I'm saying, what the Russian elites hear is right the opposite thing. They hear, you know, when Ukraine will not get a success at the field of war, we will force Ukraine to sit down and to negotiate. That's what they hear. And what's the okay? So you guys with the Legion, whatever, you are not supported by the West, the Congress, the Legion. Yeah, it's just like Ukraine is trying to do something, but Ukraine would be forced by the United States to behave otherwise. And we just need to sit and wait and do nothing. And that's exactly what they're doing.
So let me throw in a wild card. Wagner Group. What changes as a result of Prigozhin's death?
Oh, well, for us, it's all positive because in all our military plans, the biggest hazard was having them at our backs because they are very loyal to Putin. We never took as they tried to replace Putin. No, our view was that it was against Shoigu, but that they still loyal to Putin, and for us they would be dangerous because they are quick, they are ruthless, they are very adventurous, and so if we are not moving quick enough, they can definitely create a major obstacle for us at the Endspiel. So now they will vanish, and the forces that are right now in Belarus, they would be diluted inside the Russian military. And the African forces, I don't know what would happen with them, but most likely, again, they would be divided among different players and actors. So as a consolidated force, they would cease to exist. And that's very helpful. They would also, it means a decreased threat to Lithuania and Poland. That means more assistance to Ukraine. Which is very good because right now they were afraid and trying to consolidate something at their own hands. So it's a relief. And so I see only positive things. And that's exactly, by the way, why I think that it was not Putin who was ordering assassination of Prigozhin, that it was Shoigu. It was his personal revenge on Prigozhin. But for Putin, the situation looks like he lost a lot.
Is there any chance that members of the Wagner Group will feel that they should take revenge on Putin? I mean, you're saying you don't think it was Putin, but perhaps they believe it was, that they could turn on Putin and even become supporters of groups like the Legion?
Certain individuals could, but as something massive, no. Because as you understand, Wagner largely consists of two categories of people, of former prisoners who are fighting for their personal freedom, and they don't care for nothing. They just need guarantees that they would be acquitted and would become free people, and most likely they will, by the way. Secondly, second group is mercenaries who are fighting for money, and they don't care who is paying money for them, and they would definitely not lose their revenues. They may become rebellious only in the situation if they offered nothing, but that most likely would not be the case. And anyway, to accept this type of guys for money, that means that they would betray us at any given moment, right? And we don't have that money to pay to them anyway. So, there is a tiny faction there. It's very small of people who are really joining them, for patriotic reasons, because they were thinking they are doing good things for the country. And such people may have this sentiment. We definitely would never accept anyone who was fighting in Ukraine and conducting all the war crimes there. But if they were, say, sitting in Africa or in Syria and just honestly fighting, and right now they want to make a revenge and they would turn to us, well, we will take a look. But I definitely would not expect anything major, and I definitely would be to the country, to some of our peers in the Russian opposition who are saying, "Oh, Prigozhin was our ally, and we need to support him." And now they're calling, "Okay, join us." Guys, we need to be moral. Being immoral, that means that they are losing our main advantage at this war.
I want to go back to something you said in the beginning and return to a discussion about the United States and its support for Ukraine and its opposition to Russia, frankly. What you've said is you believe the U.S. has the wrong goal. And I think there's some real wisdom.
I believe that U.S. doesn't have any goal. That's worse.
Okay, all right, even better. But when you said that earlier, it kind of made me think about football, American football, and the coach. The coach really has a lot to do with whether the team wins or loses, right? You can put the best players on a team with a bad coach, and they're not going to do as well as some pretty good players and a fantastic coach. Because what a coach does is they align them around a very specific goal, right? And I think part of what you're saying is today the US's goal is we're going to help Ukraine as long as it needs help. That's like a football coach saying, we're going to play until we win.
No, we're just going to play.
Oh, we're just going to play. All right. Yes. All right, we're going to play. We're going to play. Yes, all right. Yes, and a winning coach, regardless of who he got as players, says to his team on the day of first practice, we're going to the Super Bowl and we're going to win. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And I think that's what you're saying is the U.S. can't just say we're going to help Ukraine. The U.S. needs to say the goal is the end of Putin, the end of Putinism, and the replacement of something positive, not only for the Ukrainian people and the Polish people, but also for the Russian people themselves. I think that's really what you're saying, is it needs to be very specific and very clear.
I think that the goal most likely should be stated differently, because replacement of Putinism, that's an instrument. And United States by default, why should the United States be interested in replacing Putinism? Some regime in some other country in a different part of the world, large country, but nevertheless, U.S. needs stability, security, and peace. That's what U.S. needs. US needs that people would be focused on their personal prosperity, that it's safe to travel, that you don't need to spend extra dollars for increased energy prices, for example, for gas stations. The US doesn't need to spend taxpayers' money on the security in Europe because it has an unstable and dangerous player who is threatening everyone. That's what United States needs. And that's a national interest. Who cares about what's going on in Russia? It's us to care, but not you. I don't care who would be your next president. I care it only from the point of view what would be his policies towards us.
Yes.
But the rest is on you guys, and that's exactly what is needed. So I think that the United States should be interested in ending this war as soon as possible. The United States should be interested that in future this war would never be repeated. The United States is interested to have a strong ally to contain China, because I don't think that it's realistic in any near future to make China an ally, right? And I don't think that China needs to be an enemy either, but not being an ally, you need some counterbalance. And Russia is a natural counterbalance to that. Who has the more interest in containing China but Russia?
Yes.
And all these factors, they speak that United States needs friendly, stable, peaceful, and Western aligned Russia. That's what is needed, and I think that's a perfect objective, which is absolutely feasible to achieve. And this war that Putin has started against Ukraine is the reasonable cause for this. It's a good occasion, because if not that, this regime could have brought them, for long period of indefinite future. But right now it's about to collapse, and that imposes an additional threat, because I do agree that the next regime, theoretically, I don't think so, but that it's very high probability, but it is a probability that the next regime could be worse. And to stay as an observant, and just hope that the situation would be resolved by itself, I don't see the point, because I would understand that, okay, another 100 billion needs to be spent to change the regime in Russia. No, I'm talking about things that could be done for free. There's no expense at putting some bright minds to think about the strategy. Is no expense in putting verbal support behind the armed Russian opposition. There is no expense in formulating the grand vision and aligning using powerful US diplomacy of all Rammstein coalition countries behind a certain objective, because Germans would not do it, French would not do it, British, they have certain stamina to do it, but still, it would be better if, all 5 ICE countries at least would be aligned behind this. Now, Eastern Europeans are trying to do this, but they still feel like they're a bit weak. It would be kind of strange to think that Poland would do what usually has been done by the United States.
Yes.
And then who is the superpower at the end of the day, right?
Yes. So, sort of down in at the level of politics and maneuverability and logistics, how does the U.S. change its policy? How does the Biden administration do that and come out? I mean, look, politics matter. Anything the Biden administration does has to also serve to make the Biden administration look better, particularly going into an election year, right? How does the Biden administration follow your guidance here and come out smelling like a rose?
The recipe is simple. Take the spoon, look at it, and say, there is no spoon. And they say, there is no Putin. There is no Putin. He's gone. He's already gone, and just for us to realize this, we need a little bit of time. But these events with Prigozhin is just another illustration. There is no more powerful leader of Russia. You know, there is a weak guy who kind of at the helm, but is not really ruling the country. Is like an English king now, and he's not managing the situation. The situation worsens, and just stop fears. Stop your fears. Just feel yourself powerful as you are, and take the responsibility. It's not the responsibility for Russians, it's the responsibility for the American people. And I think it's in everybody's interest. And everything bad which could have happened already happened.
So there's really three pieces to it as far as I can tell. The weapons to finish the job, support for an alternative government, the Congress of People's Deputies, and support for the military force like the Legion that can back up the Congress during the period of transition. It really is, as you're describing, that simple. And as you just said brilliantly, the bad stuff has already happened.
Yes. Just make the vision and stick to it.
Or as Nike would say, just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. Yes, you're absolutely right.
I don't know where to go from here. I think we've I think we just
go
came
go
up with
to
a
Ukraine.
plan.
Go to Ukraine, yes. Go to Ukraine. And let's just do it.
I think Ilya, you have perfectly described the plan. It's simple, it's easy to follow, it's logical, it's moral, it's just. And as you said, the most important part, selfishly, it's in the interest of the American people.
Oh, it should be. Only such plans work that are in the interest of person who is making the plan. All other plans are not working. And they shouldn't.
Well, on that note, is there anything else you want to say before I let you go?
I think that's great. Let's publish this.
And let's get it in the hands of those who can make it happen. Ilya, thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.